Welcome to Unfinished, where we, the over 50, declare that we are absolutely not finished. We talk about continued growth, new learning, new experiences, new adventure. We talk about new relationships, new beginnings, and how we make the rest of our lives the best of our lives. Today is going to be an impactful conversation about a growing phenomena that is not a pleasant one. In my own experience, talking to my friends and colleagues, more and more people, particularly beyond the age of 50, are experiencing what we call corporate burnout. So Jules, my guest today, has experienced that firsthand, but now has turned that experience into helping other people. Welcome, Jules. Super excited to have you. So introduce yourself, please, and let's talk about it.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm Jules Gordon. I am a corporate burnout survivor. Let's start there first. And having left corporate, I set up a business called Australia, and I focus on leadership, development, coaching, taking people probably out of or into the boardroom, depending on where they are in their phase of life, but also helping with the parameters so as they don't burn out. I wouldn't wish that upon anybody, if I'm honest. So, yeah, if you want to start with what happened to me.
I think we should. I want to make one point. I think, and I've fallen into this trap of, because I have my own experience, right? Which is, okay, you hit burnout, you've got to exit. Okay. And I think maybe there is another option where, it's not necessarily that everybody who experiences corporate burnout has to jettison it and become a painter. There are ways in which people can make it work, which is where I think some of what you do actually can help people. I think we tend to think that, okay, this, I can't deal with this anymore, I'm out. Whereas actually, I think for some people, there is a route to stay in, but in a different way.
There is. And I think perhaps if we talk about what burnout is and isn't first, might be helpful. So it's a phrase that's used a lot, right? So you hear, oh, I'm really burnt out. No, you're not, you're tired. I'm so burnt out. You might be overwhelmed. There are so many different feelings that people are experiencing, and they'll attach that word to it. And that's not what true burnout is. And I'm pleased, actually, that if that's what they think it is, and they just need to plug into a duvet, absolutely cracking, because I wouldn't wish what it really is on anybody. And
what was your experience, Jules?
my experience. So, first and foremost, I've always done big jobs. I've always been super successful in huge jobs. At the point I reached burnout was no exception. So at that particular point, I was the Chief People Officer for a portfolio of about 42 companies in the land of private equity. I was in and out of London most days, in the dark. I got up and I went in the dark. I came home in the dark. I worked in an office where I didn't see the daylight. It had windows, don't get me wrong, but the meeting rooms that I was in, most of the time, it didn't. Under artificial light, you don't see daylight, let alone anything else. Now, the difference being what happened here, and this is where it gets kind of quite interesting and really important, is that burnout and experiencing burnout is linked to your values. It's linked to you as a person and what's going on in the environment around you. And so for me, when I got to that stage, the CEO that I had opted to work with had changed, and not for the better. So there was a big change there. It wasn't that I didn't get on or, didn't like the person, none of that. Their value sets and how they chose to run the business wasn't aligned with my value set. So I won't operate on the wrong side of right. For me, I kind of treat people how I'd expect to be treated, all of that good and great stuff. So when interference starts being run, first of all, you think, doesn't feel right, but maybe I misunderstood. And you start making all these excuses. When that carries on and there's a real misalignment with the values, that causes conflict, like huge conflict. For me, that conflict started with, okay, maybe I'm failing. You go from being super high performing to feeling that you are actually doing everything wrong, that you're failing. You're constantly like looking over your shoulder. There's the whole, I'm not good enough, but you can't articulate that because you've always been a high performer and failing isn't an option. You know, you're programmed to do more and more and more.
And better.
And better. So more of what made you successful before, which equals the dark mornings, the dark nights, going around the clock like crazy. But how that then manifested, I ignored my physical warning signs. So, you know, mouth ulcers, things like that. Oh, you know, that's whatever that is. Constant headaches. Yeah, it's because I haven't got any fresh air today. Everything starts to hurt. Oh, well, you know, that was that gym session. And so you can go on and you can make excuses for every single thing that's going on, all the way through to, I don't know, general body aches and chalking it up to the gym, or, oh no, that symptom's definitely perimenopause. You know, there's like literally everything can be attributed to something else, and it's not. And then came the extreme, debilitating panic attacks. I would get on the train in the morning. I don't know how I got from Hungerford to Liverpool Street. I have no idea.
Oh, wow.
I don't know. I would have extreme panic attacks. The closer I got to London, the worse it got. Wouldn't be able to go in. Some days you think the 5 minutes that you take just to be able to breathe is being shut in the toilet at work. But such was my job. I would have people walking with me to the bathroom and they would be talking to me outside the cubicle. I'm like, oh my God, there's just no getting away from this. And it got so bad. I work with people in organisations now, or I see teams, you can sense it. They're the buildings that you go into and everybody looks a shade of what I describe as corporate grey. They're kind of operating behind a mask. Their face is all grey. They're dead behind the eyes. There's no life. The atmosphere feels, I suppose it's like when you buy in a house, you've either got like something that you go, ooh, or you've got something that's like, ooh. And so the atmosphere feels really bad. But you see it in the skin tone. And so I didn't recognise myself. I stood in front of the mirror one morning and I did not know who was looking back at me. My family, my friends had been concerned for quite some time. Did I listen? No, because you don't.
You're a high performer.
Because you're a high performer, so you just do more and more and more and more. Every month, to kind of regulate my nervous system, and I still do this now, I always go to a sound bath now. Some people will be like, oh, that's mumbo jumbo, or others, for me, it works. But during that period of time, whilst in this deep meditative state, I would see all this blue. And I asked the practitioner, I'm like, I've got this. And he was like, that's really interesting. That's your throat chakra. What words are stuck? What aren't you saying? And I'm like, oh, this has just got a bit scary. I don't like this because I know what. Yeah. I was like, I know what I'm not saying, and I don't think I'm ready to say that yet. So to make a decision took me probably over 6 months, and in hindsight, I look back at that period of time and I'm like, what did you do that to yourself for? I can't pass that on to anybody else. I own that I was in that situation. I knew there was a misalignment with my value set. I knew I couldn't go on like that. I couldn't operate in an environment where I was told how to dress, because I don't turn up head to foot in corporate black or grey, actually. That was what was expected of me. here's a lip gloss because you should be wearing one of those, and don't wear trainers. I always wear trainers. Don't wear trainers. You have to wear shoes. I'm like, wait, what? You know, I'm like, how have we got to this? It's like being back at school and you need a
Oh, it's much worse
uniform.
than that.
Well,
It's much worse than, but
yeah,
yes, the
yeah,
analogy's right. Yeah.
yeah. But if you go back to school, we're kind of conditioned this
Yeah.
way. So we are
Yeah.
told that we've all got to turn up
Yeah.
and we're the same. This is what you've got to wear. This is how you've got to behave. This is what you've got to do. Then being British, keep calm and carry on. Do you know what I mean? Like, what on earth does that mean? But keep calm and carry on, you know, just ignore all of this stuff. Work hard, play hard. We get told this stuff from a really, really young age. So when there's that conflict and your values that doesn't align as mine didn't with the organisation I was in, what then happens, aside from the physical stuff, it takes a mental toll too. And for me, it resulted in getting to the point where I'm like, I'd lost my identity. I didn't know who I was, what was going on. I didn't know how I was functioning. I was barely functioning. It was awful. I was probably rubbish at home. It was definitely having a knock-on impact with my work. So you over-index on everything.
I didn't like who I'd become.
Yeah.
Just as an aside, that was sort of my the real epiphany, which is, you know, like you said, you looked in the mirror. I did it, not literally, but it's like, I don't really like who I've become.
No.
And that's a horrible place.
It's really horrible because you feel so lost, actually. And if you don't like who you are, how can you expect anybody else to like you too? And I think the people around you, that your support system, are absolutely fantastic. It's great that they're there, but they take the brunt of some of this stuff too.
Oh, of course they do.
And I think they deserve deserve a medal. So I understand that completely. Yeah, and I think I got to the stage where, because I didn't like who I was and I didn't know who I was anymore, I also didn't want to be around the people that I cared deeply about. I pushed them all away because I thought, well, I don't want to like it. I had so much going through my head all at once, and you don't want to fall out with any of them and compromise the only one good thing that you've got going on. But even that isn't in the right space at that time.
I think it's, you know, it's you made a good point early on. It's like we use the term corporate burnout kind of willy-nilly, and I do, by the way, so mea culpa, I'm guilty. But and it's not, you know, this is not about corporates are bad. They're very good corporates, and people have wonderful careers and are very happy, and for a long time I was too. So this is not a diss on that. But there seems to be a phenomena where people get to a point, and it just happens to typically be early 50s, but it's not necessarily, where people realize for a number of reasons, I can't do this anymore. And that manifests as a number of different things. You know, you've described there are physical things that happen. And often, you know, people can reach for the wrong things: alcohol, gambling, drugs, affairs, whatever. You know, that's because I want to feel better, quote unquote. And then it feels like the final kind of cataclysmic kind of event is then mental, which is, you know, and people have I use another term loosely, a breakdown and or slide unerringly into depression. And, you know, as somebody who experienced clinical depression in his 20s, depression is not feeling down. Depression is not being able to get out of bed, right? And people say, well, why? Can you not just sit up and put your feet on the ground? No, you cannot, right? You cannot function. So, you know, there comes a point where this is a long process, and at least it is for most people, where we're very good as high performers at masking.
Yeah,
So
100%.
we mask for a long
Yeah.
time, and that's just chewing out more and more
Yeah.
of our psyche, our energy, our physical ability until we cannot mask anymore. And that
Yeah.
is typically a tipping point.
And that's exactly the values misalignment. So you've
Yeah.
lost who you are. So it's an
Yeah.
identity play. So you've lost or compromised, if you like, through circumstances that you thought were or things that you were doing that you thought were the right thing to do. But that values misalignment does then get you to that point. How that manifested for me was everything that was stuck and that I wasn't saying. There was one final straw, and I thought, do you know what? This is it. So my dad got cancer. He's okay now, by the way, but my dad got cancer, and in the misaligned organisation that I was in, and it was a toxic environment. I'm not going to pretend it wasn't. It very much was. I was basically, Dad texted me of all of the ways to get a message to say that, you know, somebody that you love dearly has got cancer. So I picked up, and I've got two phones. One was work, one was play. HR through and through. They'll always remain separate, right? So he texted me and WhatsApped me on two different phones, and I had both of these phones going off. I've got cancer. And I was like, wait, what? Are you joking? And I rang him. And I said, I need to leave. I was with the CEO at the time. I said, I need to leave. And I got back, well, what about the Great Place to Work event that you're hosting tonight? I was like, are you joking? So I ended up hosting a table at a Great Place to Work award ceremony. I was there in person, mentally. I had long since gone. How do you even process
there's a
this
real
stuff?
irony there. Great place
Oh,
to
I
work
know.
or whatever. It's just perfectly ironic, isn't it?
100%.
Oh my
It
God.
was the weirdest night of my life. And for me, actually, that was the thing that enabled me to find my voice, because I thought, I knew all along that the misalignment of values was so huge under the previous CEO that I'd opted into. It was a great place to work. That's how we'd got the awards, you know. It had quite rapidly gone downhill. And so I did that. And then I thought, right, I'll have this conversation. So I had the conversation and said, for me, I needed to exit. I couldn't work in an environment where I was expected to wear funeral clothes, look half dead, not wear anything that made me, like no colour please, behave in a certain way, operate in a certain way, and all of those certain ways were fundamentally against who I was. And I'm like, I'm compromised. So I went to leave, and such was the level of intensity of working in that toxic environment. Every 2 minutes, I was literally constantly on my phone. So within the first couple of days, I'm like, oh, I don't have to do that. I didn't know what to do. And that took quite a lot of unlearning. But just when I felt like I could breathe, and it's a bit like going on holiday and you lose the first week because you're so knackered, and you know, I think we've all done that at some point. And it lost the first week, and then you just start enjoying it and you've got to come home. So I just got into this thing where I thought, oh, I can breathe. And Jim had taken me away for a few days, and then the person messaged me, and they started messaging me on my personal phone, and I instantly had a huge panic attack again. I was right back in that place. It was really, really awful. And it was because when I left, I had a period of X amount of weeks where, you know, I was invisible, but I was still around working on my release from the company. So I couldn't talk to anybody, but they could reach me. So that was going on in that particular point. And then I ended up in hospital. My body decided we're not playing anymore. I had a burst appendix.
Oh my God.
Was it happens to be the weekend that all of the consultants were on strike. So do you think I could get seen? So I didn't know what was going on. I've never been in so much pain in my life. I couldn't even stand up in the hospital. Like poor old Jim, if I think back on this, was mortified. He took me there and there was a seat and I'm like, I can't sit on a seat. It hurts too much. I just want to lay on the floor. And he's like, Jules, you can't lay on the floor. And I'm like, I'm laying on the floor. I'm just in Swindon Hospital laying on the floor. And he's looking like, what the heck is going on here? So when they eventually saw me and I'd been left for quite a number of hours, they realised that it was critical. I very nearly didn't survive what had happened there. And I was in that hospital for days and days and days, because lots of people go in, they'll have something taken out and then they can go home again and recover. I couldn't, because I nearly...
You were spent.
Yeah, I nearly didn't survive. It was that bad. And so that was a weird time for me, because I was in this significant period of burnout, but I didn't know that's what it was at that point in time. That learning came much later. I didn't know what was happening to me. I didn't know who I was. I suddenly didn't have a job that I had absolutely loved in a company which I had absolutely loved. I didn't have that anymore either. All of it gone. And I'm like, what do? I don't even know where to start anymore. And I was completely and utterly lost. And there were a few things that then kind of helped. So when I couldn't get in and out when I was going in and out at really antisocial times in London, and the gym that I used to train at, I couldn't get to. I couldn't do any of the classes, because by the time I got back, they had already finished. So I joined CrossFit.
Right. Before we go there, I want to back up a little bit. And this is interesting. So I have been sort of outside of the corporate environment for about 6 months. And actually, interesting, one of the things I've learned is actually I miss the social interaction. So I'm feeling lonelier, because you forget that every day you're interacting with people, and not all people are bad, right? So just
No, they're not.
So
They're
that was
not.
it's just something interesting that I've observed. So but your particular experience, at the tail end of that corporate experience, you were in, as you described, a toxic environment.
Yes.
And I absolutely buy that.
Yeah.
I don't think all burnout actually results from a toxic environment. I take my example. Mine was, I was not in a toxic environment at all. So my situation was more about, I've spent nearly 3 decades, doing something to earn a living and whatever. And because I want to be successful, and I was told at school I was bright, so I had to be successful, and all of that.
Yep.
Mine was more of a realization as I need to just check out to understand whether I can actually still do this.
Yeah.
And it was, your point about values is right, but it was more about my values shifted to look at, I've got finite time left, right?
Yeah.
There's more days in front, there's less days in front of the horse than behind the cart, is the expression, right? And I suddenly thought, can I invest every day, or at least 5 days a week, in strategy meetings and team building meetings and whatever? And, the answer is maybe I can, maybe I can't. I will have to work that out. But I think what happens is, at least in my situation, and this chimes with another person I spoke to, is you go into the workplace and you're young, you're keen, you're career driven, and it's, the trajectory's upwards. You learn, you experience, you get better, and you get, if you're lucky, you get some great leadership training. And you kind of hit a level sort of where you plateau, and you're performing based on what you've learned and your experience and the knowledge you've accrued and your networking, your connections. You become sort of comfortably capable, if I can call it that. But there comes a point where, people say, oh, well, it's age per se and youngsters coming. It's not actually. I think it's you get to a point where it's like, can I keep doing this? It's my values are shifting, to your point. And you know, in my case, what do I actually want to do? Now,
It's about who you are.
yeah, and who we are is not static from the day of our birth, right?
No,
It shifts.
changes.
So absolutely.
Yeah.
But you know, so my burnout, if I can call it that, wasn't from a toxic environment, but it became absolutely toxic for me because I stopped. I think, and I'm scared to admit this, but I think I just became worse at what I do, but I was good at masking it because I've been, you know, pretty successful. And as I say, I didn't like who I'd become. That, like you, had a physical toll.
Yeah.
Hugely,
Yeah.
right? Hugely, which I won't go into, but absolutely physical toll and ultimately a mental toll.
Yeah.
You know, I just, so the point I'm trying to make is, you know, it's, you can be driven or you can reach that point as a, at least in part because of a unhealthy environment. You can also reach that where it's not just the blame of the environment, it's we change, right? And our needs and values change. And if that's incongruent, the outcome is the same, right? The same quote unquote burnout or whatever you want. The need to change is the same.
It always starts with who you are. So there's an element of toxicity that can be the environment you're in or how that manifests for you. But the whole values piece is who you are. And if you feel or you do not fit for whatever reason in that environment that you're in,
fit's a good word.
Yeah. That's where these things start coming out. So,
it's incongruent.
So it's very, very easy when you're in that situation because you want to blame someone else. And actually, it took me a lot of deep work on myself and working with a phenomenal burnout coach myself to realize that, you know, this much is on me. It's who I am, and
but it doesn't have to be blamed, Jules.
No,
you know,
but people want to. They do want
it's
to.
It's easy to explain what it was me, which then becomes toxic, or it was the environment and whatever.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be blame, right? Things change. It's a bit like saying, you know, I used to love pizza and now I don't like pizza anymore. It's just nobody to blame, right? It's not the pizza. It's just things change.
It's chronic stress, though. At the bottom of it all,
100% agree.
That is
it's where the physical
baseline
ailment comes from.
Yeah.
You know.
And so burnout is, by definition, chronic stress. We don't wake up one morning with chronic stress. This happens over an extended period of time. And then that's the piece that links to who we are, you know, is the environment that we're operating in right for us? Does it make us healthy? But it's chronic stress.
And you know this, but just for anybody listening, you know, we have evolved as human beings. We can deal with acute stress.
Yes.
So acute stress is that brief moment of stress. It's fight or flight, you know, oh, there's a bear, I've got to run, and or whatever the case. We are very good at, we're well adapted to that. The amygdala overrides the prefrontal cortex and fight or flight, we survive. That's why we're still around as a species. The killer, and I use that word literally and I'll substantiate, the killer is chronic stress.
Yes.
There is a view in, I suppose, health research that says, while stress may not always be holding the gun, it is in the room at every death. You know, somebody may die of cancer or heart disease or whatever the case may be. Stress is in the room, right? It creates a systematic, catastrophic, inflammatory environment in our bodies. And that is ultimately then creates the grounds for the diseases we recognize as the killers. Yeah. So chronic stress is literally a matter of life and death.
Yeah.
Okay. And your point's an eloquent one. You don't wake up with chronic. It accumulates, it accumulates, it accumulates, it accumulates. and it begins having physical manifestations. And ultimately, you cannot force yourself to live through that. There will come a point where you are either seeking release, alcohol, drugs, whatever, which then just creates a cascade of different problems and more stress. But stress is at the root of this experience of I can't do this anymore.
It is.
For whatever reason.
It is. And I think that's where it comes back to all of those moments where you go to chalk it up to something else. So chronic stress, it's slow.
Yeah.
It creeps up on you. You don't recognize it because you're in it. So other people will recognize it in you, but you don't see it for yourself because you are that high performer. You are going to do all of this stuff, and hey, you're not just going to do that. Give me some more.
This is just what life is. This is what work is. This is what everyone experiences. It's the normalization of something that's not normal.
Yeah, and when something creeps in and you've got this ache and pain, or a mouthful of ulcers, all right, that is part of that, and you carry on, and as a result, people often do, and I did. I missed all of those warning signs. Did I know I had a mouthful of ulcers? Yeah, of course I did. Did I know that I wasn't moving as I wanted to, that I was eating a load of crap? Yeah, of course I did. Was I able to change all of that at that time? I felt that I couldn't, and I have spoken to people, as you've said, you've mentioned alcohol a couple of times. I've spoken to people who literally will just reach for a bottle. My diet was liquid based, and and I can understand that. Mine wasn't liquid based. It was just terrible. It was just terrible. You would have days of not eating, you would have days of eating rubbish, and that was the wavy pattern that I was in. So it's a slowly progressing thing that creeps up on you.
It's a miasma.
Yeah,
That's what it is.
but once you're there, it's debilitating, and how that comes out is in so many different ways. And so earlier on you said to me, not everybody has to leave a corporate environment, and they don't. They really, really don't at all. And in my case, I had to leave that environment for my health. Yeah. And a moment ago, I said, I left a company I loved. I left a job I loved. And those things are true as well, right? So you think, how can you love those things given what had happened? But it's about who I was in that environment. So I do lots of work now with those environments, and I don't love them any less, but there is a different way.
Yeah.
And I focus on helping people find that different way, because it's unrealistic to think, that's not working for you. Just leave, just leave all things corporate. That gives you those environments give you so many good things as well.
100%. Yeah.
They just need the infrastructure in them to support people and recognize that generationally, because we touched on different generations a moment ago, that actually you can coexist in the same workspace. Just need to acknowledge that the way that we did things once upon a time ago isn't the way that we do things now.
Yeah, and also, you used the term you're talking about, you needed to own it. I did a coaching accreditation many years ago. Just and I used to coach and mentor the different people in a corporate environment, and I loved it. Growing other people and particularly developing leadership. And people used to say, well, the company needs to do this and the company needs to do that. And I'd go, you're right, but what are you doing? Okay, so in other words, it's symbiotic, right? To create the right environment. But that's an HR related thing. That still may not prevent somebody getting to the point where they can't do it anymore because their values have shifted, their values, their priorities, their life priorities have changed. And here's the thing, right? That's not a negative scenario. It leads to negative consequences for the individual. It's like, you're sipping arsenic every day, and that you've got to stop drinking the arsenic,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's not, and we have to recognize that what matters is not the cause per se, it's the reality of that individual. It is always elevated chronic stress that leads to the tipping point. But that stress may not be because they work for an arsehole boss. It may be just they don't fit, they don't want to do this anymore, and they're struggling to find the motivation every day to go and do what they were highly motivated to do in the same environment 3 years before. Okay. So, I mean, that's and then there are cases where, you just work for diabolical arsehole and you've got to change that. There is that. But
that's why I said about helping people break into or out of the boardroom, depending on where they are.
No, you're absolutely right. My point earlier is, you can, the thing is though, if you get into a scenario where you're questioning whether you want to do this or can't do this anymore because your values have changed and whatever, there's nothing the organization can do.
No,
right?
there's not.
There really isn't, and that you've got
to do.
Own that, and I think ultimately you have to find some other
avenue,
some other path.
Yeah.
But right, let's go. No, you go.
No, go on.
No, I was going to say Swindon. Right, your literal
laying on the floor
near-death
in Great
experience.
Western. Yeah.
You come out of that. You started CrossFit.
Well, there were a couple of things. So actually, I came in for a trial into the CrossFit gym just before that, and I thought this is the place that I'm going to be. That's kind of quite cool. But I came out of that hospital, and I was due to go to Florida, and I was so upset because I just found this gym that I absolutely loved. I couldn't go and lift anything because I wasn't able to. I'd been sliced in 3 places, and they'd beautifully sliced through my ovaries whilst they were on the inside. So I was quite damaged. What I found in that environment was a space that was safe, free from judgment, with people who were very empathetic and welcomed me and met me at the stage that I was at. And that's kind of, oh my God, this I can't, we can go, stop talking about this. That's huge. And kind of, it's priceless, but also meant absolutely everything. Because I then got myself on the plane. You read the list of here's what you need to be aware of, here's what you need to do if you're going to go on a fast coaster. And I'm like, I think I break all of those rules, but should we try it anyway and we'll see what happens? And it was this weird state because I knew I was going to set Australia up. I'd had this idea as a parachute plan a year before, and it wasn't I think I'm going to get to a stage of burnout. I was happily, moving along in that organisation at that time, and everything was peachy. It was I'm working in the world of private equity. It's going to go through another cycle. At this point, you may or may not be in the mix. And if I'm not, this is my parachute plan. So that's what I was kind of like working towards. But other than coming up with the concept for the business, I'd thought no more about it. So everything kind of blew up. I'm on holiday. I'm seeing all these LinkedIn posts about the fact that I'm no longer in this organisation, and the speculation as to why. And of course you can't say anything, comment on anything. Oh my God, it was hard. And I was getting people screenshotting things and sending me things. So I've got all of this noisy interference, which was quite traumatic on top of a traumatic experience. And trying to recover, but I didn't know what I was recovering from at that point. And I was in a really, really dark place. And for me, the clarity came from the amount of hours I think I spent in the gym trying to put myself back together again. And it's funny because, and I still do this now, and you'll notice this, or anybody would, I think, if I've been in there. Like, I rarely stand in the middle. I don't like being in the middle. In that, like, that's just like, oh no, too much. I like being in the room with the support around me, but being far enough back
So you know
to
where
feel
I always
safe.
end up at the gym, right? I'm always in that one corner. And I
Yeah.
do open gym my own, I'm in the corner.
Yeah.
I think, Jules, I just want to touch on the physical exercise thing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
to be clear, one, this is not a plug for CrossFit,
No.
but there's one thing that CrossFit does that you won't get from a regular gym, right? CrossFit is community based. Okay.
Yeah.
I've belonged to gyms before for a year where I've never met anybody.
Yeah.
CrossFit, the whole concept is community based. So you meet there, you do the same workout together, everybody introduces each other, everybody supports each other. So whilst I'm not affiliated with CrossFit and I'm not plugging it, I think anybody right now listening to this saying, I need to do something about my physical condition, go and find and join your local CrossFit gym, right? You may have this mental view that everybody who does CrossFit is massive. You and I are example, which is normal people, right? That can do it. So more importantly, though, is the role of physical exercise. So, you know, the credible scientific research on health and healthy aging, right? There's a lot that the academic researchers don't agree on. One thing they all agree on: exercise is the closest we get to a silver bullet for human health.
Yeah.
Okay. This is not about a buff beach body and
No.
whatever and weight management. It is about cellular health, right? Bluntly, we cannot be healthy human beings unless we're exercising. That's a fact. Okay. So both of us, it sounds like, in difficult moments have found, and I use this term positively, a positively reinforcing crutch in exercise, right?
Yeah.
Now I know even today, if so I couldn't train for nearly 6 weeks, and my mental health was and I knew what it was, and the minute I got myself back into a routine of training, voila, clouds parted and the sun was shining again. Not literally, because we're in the UK. So I think, there's some practical things that we can do when we're feeling really low. And I'm not a doctor, but go and exercise, go for a walk, do something. Exercise is an elixir.
Exactly that. And I think, like, when you're in this period of burnout, and when I was working with my coach, and I found it so powerful. So she gets credit for this, Kelly Swingler, but it was this bottle of Coke. And if you kind of were to shake a bottle of Coke, it can be any fizzy bottle of pop that you like, but if you shake that and you go to undo, it explodes, right? That's what that feels like. You're at this state physically all the time where you are that bottle of pop that's been shaken, that you're ready to explode. Now that explosion can happen in so many different ways. It's a physical reaction, it's mentally you're not in a good space. It takes a different toll on each of us differently. We could be experiencing the same thing and we would respond differently, but that's what that feels like. And so you need something to counteract that. And whether it's CrossFit, a walk, or whether it's dancing around, like whatever that thing is for you, and it's different for all of us. It could be for somebody going and tucking themselves away and reading. For me, there's always fresh air and exercise and something like that in there.
But it's not alcohol, drugs, social media, or whatever. It's not it's not trying to numb yourself. It's not distraction, right?
No.
It's and I go as far as to say, do something that's hard. Something that's not easy for you to do. It's easy for us to pick up on social media. It's easy to have another glass of wine. It's a bit harder to drag your ass out to go for a walk. Okay.
It is. And I think we have to kind of almost be kind to ourselves and take the baby steps, because as the as a high performer and programmed that way, I get really cross with myself if I'm then at the gym and I'm shit. And I'm like, hang on a minute. And so it starts coming out, yeah, like my voice in my head will be telling me all this stuff. So I have to kind of balance that, and I've learned that balance over time. So I always keep yoga in the mix because that grounds me. My head will be running at a million times, an hour. It's not by the time I finish that. But there are days that you just need to make sure that you get that balance, because otherwise you're in this state of perpetual disappointment where you can't do the activities to make you feel better and making you feel annoyed because you've been really rubbish at them.
I think, it's we would never say to other people what we say to ourselves.
Yeah, oh, yeah, quite.
And that's a different topic,
Yeah.
but it's a significantly important one. So Australia, right?
Yes.
Again, you've come out of this multifaceted bad experience, the toxic environment, the exiting, nearly literally losing your life,
Yeah,
right? You found
yeah,
the beginnings of, like,
yeah. There's a chink of light.
a chink of light through exercise. It was great. You had this plan for Australia as a parachute plan before that. So what happened then?
Yeah. So I don't know how into Greek mythology you are, but Australia is the goddess of fairness, balance, and justice.
I didn't know that.
There we go. See,
There you
and
go.
so when and that's why the business is called what it's called. So me, as part of my parachute plan, I'm like, what are the things that are important to me and align with kind of who I am? And it's all about fairness. I think we spoke about treating people as I would expect to be treated myself, around making sure you've got the balance. Everything just has to be so. And so I started that business. I've got a whole background in conflict and conflict resolution, and that's where I thought I would be spending most of my time. And it shape-shifted, and I love it that it shape-shifted. And that's been very much, I think, through my own personal growth and development too. So I'd mentioned that I didn't know I had burnout until I started kind of working with a fabulous burnout coach myself. And I'm like, oh, yeah, hang on a minute, what's going on there? So how do I become burnout awareness accredited? Because being a coach too, and you'll know this, some of the tools that we might use when we're coaching people can be quite damaging.
Yeah.
If you don't know what burnout looks like and you're not able to spot it, then it can cause more harm than good to people. We could be coaching somebody through a problem on a regular day and think, oh, it sounds like they might need some boundaries. Actually, that's not what they need whatsoever.
And I, by the way, I don't coach people.
No.
And I'll tell you why. Because the coaching, training, and accreditation I did was very much geared towards leadership coaching.
Yeah.
Okay? It's very, very different.
Yeah.
From what you do.
Yeah.
Right? I would not even begin or deign to do what you do. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think that the other, I think as well, because of your own experience,
Yeah.
right, you are able to exercise a degree of empathy and truly see a situation through somebody's eyes, stand in their shoes, as they say, that somebody else couldn't. And I think that's really powerful, because fundamentally coaching, in the true sense of the word, has to be empathy based, right?
Yeah.
We see models and things, and to your point, we apply them, and that can be so dangerous.
Yeah, it can. And so I started there, and I took more and more kind of clients on, particularly from a burnout awareness point of view. And then since then, I also do lots of Lego serious play.
I'm so excited to this topic. But what I will say, I'm going to say it now. We need to do episode 2, Jules, because and actually we can sit on the floor, do whatever. I think there's
Yeah.
some of the things that I think we need to expand on.
Yeah.
But yeah, go on.
So
Tell me
that
about it.
Lego serious play piece, I can do in teams, solving for any type of problem that you can possibly think of. But I actually use the Lego as a modality when I'm coaching. And so the power that comes, we touched a little bit earlier on neuroscience, but what actually happens if you've got bricks in your hands, your brain decides to build whatever it honestly wants to build. And when you come to talking about it, it's incredibly powerful. We go deep very quickly. It's extremely raw. Things come out through the art of making a model because we've stepped back into that phase that kind of maybe possibly childhood. You know, you pick up some bricks, you make something. There were no rules. You just did what came naturally. So it's absolutely fascinating. So I use that a lot now when I'm coaching, no matter whether we're talking about burnout awareness or not. And I also do that with organisations too, and working through a variety of problems there. You can cover anything from, you know, your nightmare boss to get them to focus on the opposite and what makes a team strong.
And I think, you know, right now at this point, I guarantee you, somebody listening to this is going to go, Lego, this is mumbo jumbo. Let me be really clear, right? You don't get a different result by doing the same thing.
No.
And what we do today, most of us, is we spend large parts of our days distracted, right? We live in the world of social media, and it's crippling our ability to think and create. And anyway, that's, again, a different topic. Something like Lego Play is different for you, and that is the first bit of its power. It's similar in a way, but different to writing. You know, so journaling, for example, I journal most days. I sit over there and I've got my red cherry book, and I because that act of writing, right? It's different for my brain than scrolling. I tried journaling electronically.
It's not the same.
Rubbish.
It's
completely it's bullshit, right? And your journaling apps, I've done it all. When I write physically with a pen, it's very, very different. And I think the Lego thing. So whoever's listening to this and is skeptical, try it, right?
Do you know what?
Just try it.
I had I was in London a few weeks ago with a group of about 20 business owners, and we were using Lego Serious Play to overcome their single biggest problem with scaling their business. And what actually came out, it started with the usual, oh God, these bricks, they're on the floor, I've stood on them, I'm not interested. I had the words, I hate Lego. I said, great. I said, could you keep an open mind for me and let me know what you think afterwards?
Yep,
I got like massive hugs afterwards. I mean, it was raw. What we discovered there was burnout going on. There were personal issues, you name it. It came out. It would never have came out in a million years otherwise, because these are the things that people think, well, I can't talk about that because somebody's going to judge me. So it's a judgment-free zone. So I use that quite a lot now, and it also links really beautifully to any Gallup Strengths Finders. So how you can really focus on your core strengths, which, if you've been in a period of not really knowing who you are, I certainly didn't know who I was, focusing on strengths is huge. So Australia does all of those things for both individuals and with teams. In corporates, I don't have an aversion to corporates or working with anybody in them. What I would really like to do is to be able to help make a positive difference, so as it's a better environment for people and they understand how they bring their best self into that environment. That's really, really important.
Jules, we're at a time now. So, but, and I mean this. I think we need to do another one But I would really like to drill more into Australia and,
Yeah.
and what you do. And I'll tell you why I want to do that. Because again, if one person has listened to this
Yeah.
and has gone, okay, this helps me begin to understand what I'm going through,
Yeah.
that what we'll do in episode 2 will begin to get them to realize that actually there are ways that one can navigate
Yeah.
the situation, right,
Yeah.
to get to the light
Yeah.
that is showing.
Very much so.
So yeah, we'll do. We're running up to Christmas. I think early Jan. Let's get back here
We
and do
should do.
another
And
one.
I think on that point, last week, I was in London last Wednesday, and it's the first time that I have done the train journey. So it was that train
Oh
at that
wow!
time,
Oh wow!
going to the same station. I was getting
Yeah.
off there. And it was the first time that I felt like myself. It was huge.
Oh,
And I
brilliant.
did a little post about it because it wasn't until I came out the train station, I was like, oh. And if it can help one person so as they don't feel all of those things and have the experience that I had, that's huge.
So we'll end there, right?
Yeah.
Everything you've been through, right?
Yeah.
That moment that you've just described, we
Yeah.
can all get there.
Yeah, 100%.
We can all get
Yeah,
there.
I believe
Brilliant.
that. Yeah.
Awesome to have you. We'll
Thank you,
talk
Dominic.
again soon.
Thank you.